Today's lesson is on angles. First, we're going to look at some vocabulary words. An acute angle is an angle with a measure greater than 0 degrees but less than 90 degrees. A right angle is an angle with a measure equal to 90 degrees. An obtuse angle is an angle with a measure greater than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees. Now we're going to identify three angles. For the first angle, we have exactly 90 degrees. So this is going to be a right angle. For our second angle, we have an angle that is greater than 0 degrees but less than 90 degrees. So this is an acute angle. And for our third angle, we have an angle that is greater than 90 degrees but less than 180 degrees. So this is an obtuse angle. Now we have a couple more vocabulary words. Two angles are complementary if the sum of their measures is 90 degrees. Two angles are supplementary if the sum of their measures is 180 degrees. First, we're going to look at a couple of complementary angles. These angles are complementary because the sum of their measures is equal to 90 degrees. So for number 1, we need to find the value of x. If we know that these two angles together equal 90 degrees, we can subtract 25 degrees from 90 degrees and we will find x. So we have 90 degrees minus 25 degrees. We cannot subtract 5 from 0, so we will borrow from the 9, and it becomes an 8. And now our 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 8 minus 2 is 6. So x equals 65 degrees. For number 2, we again have complementary angles. When we add up our two angles, we will get 90 degrees. So in order for us to find x, we need to take 90 degrees and subtract 40 degrees. 0 minus 0 is 0, and 9 minus 4 is 5. So x equals 50 degrees. Now we're going to look at supplementary angles. These are angles that when you add them up, they equal 180 degrees. So on number 1, if we know that one angle is 22 degrees, we can subtract that from 180 to find x. So we have 180 minus 22. We cannot subtract 2 from 0, so we will borrow from the 8, and it becomes a 7. And now this 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. 7 minus 2 is 5. And 1 minus nothing is 1. So x equals 158 degrees. For number 2, we have supplementary angles. So when we add up our two angles, we will get 180 degrees. So in order for us to find x, we will take 180 degrees and we will subtract 120 degrees. 0 minus 0 is 0. 8 minus 2 is 6. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So x equals 60 degrees. Now we have a couple more vocabulary words. Vertical angles are formed when two lines intersect. They are congruent. Adjacent angles are next to each other on a transversal. They are supplementary. Now we're going to identify the adjacent angles and the vertical angles in our diagram. In our diagram, we have a set of parallel lines. So the two lines here are parallel, and they are cut by a transversal, so this line goes through both of them. The adjacent angles are the angles that are next to each other. So angles 1 and 2 are adjacent angles. They are next to each other. So angle 1 and angle 2. Angle 1 is also next to angle 3. So angle 1 and angle 3 are also adjacent angles. Angle 2 is also next to angle 4. So those are adjacent angles. And angles 3 and 4 are next to each other. Now we can look down here. Angles 5 and 6 are next to each other. Angle 5 and angle 7 are next to each other. Angle 6 and angle 8 are next to each other. And angle 7 and angle 8 are next to each other. So these are all pairs of adjacent angles. Now we'll look at the vertical angles in our diagram. The vertical angles are across from each other and they are congruent, they're equal. So angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical angles. Angle 2 and angle 3 are vertical angles. Angle 5 and angle 8 are vertical angles. And angle 6 and angle 7 are vertical angles. So these 4 pairs are the vertical angles from our diagram. Don't forget to fill out your notes and remember to watch the video again if needed.